So, over the past week, I've done something around 60 to 75 runs of the new escalation missions in the Division 2. Do I think that this fiasco surrounding Prototype Gear is necessarily as bad as the community makes it out to be? Not exactly. However, is it still bad? I'll say, the flavor sucks. But there is a potential underneath the cracked surface. Let's talk about why it tastes bad, but also what it does do well. Hi, I'm Oniki-san. Welcome to my channel. So, with the introduction of the Rise Up season for Division 2, we've gotten a lot of good content, such as retaliations, a new tier of loot with extra build crafting and higher stats, and a new series of missions that feature scaling difficulty with better drops in higher tiers, that can be played in solo or in a group. These missions have mutators that change, and the missions themselves change every little while. Did I mention this update is free in 2026? Where one outfit can cost as much as $20? On paper, it looks wonderful actually. But first, we need some context as to why people are mad and why I'm about to give a mildly hot take. For context of myself, and long story short of my standing with the Division franchise, I have played the Division series since the closed beta of the original Division. And I have played quite a few hours throughout the game's life cycle. I also play Warframe and have played and mostly enjoyed every entry of Borderlands, most entries of Destiny, amongst a slew of other looter-type games, even for a while enjoying Black Desert Online. Talk about a grind. I enjoy challenges, I enjoy feats of skill, and I deeply enjoy self-expression through playstyle, build crafting, and fashion in online games. Now, I played Division 2 with a sense of being my general main game up until about year 4 or so in its life cycle. Division 1 had its status as my main game for quite some time, up until the release of Destiny 2. The Division 2 held me as my main game for a bit as well in its release, but in year 4 I prioritized Destiny 2 again as my looter shooter and part of my decade-long journey into the Destiny franchise. However, I've been back to Division 2 since midway through year 7, and almost immediately farmed and optimized the builds I wanted, with the exception of stuff like Ravenous and the newer core strength set, which, thank you Retaliation, for my beautiful Ravenous. Now, that being said, in most games I say, well, I don't need every little bit of sweet gear. As long as I have gear I can enjoy and vibe with, I'm happy. For example, I used the same sweet business from the PC day of Destiny 2 all the way to my very last day during Edge of Fate, 8 years later. And honestly, I personally never mind an infinite grind. I have burned out Division 2 because I would just hit a wall of nothing to do, not even a build to grind for, since I had everything. The optimization just made the problem more intense, as now I could find some meh pieces and make it perfect. And I understand that a lot of the casual players want to maintain their ease of being able to make a build. But at the same time, we need a fix for those who want to invest more time into Division. Now, don't get me wrong. Massive went way too far with what they did. Mathematically speaking, I have a higher chance of winning my local lottery than getting a God roll prototype. However, on paper, it isn't necessarily a bad update. But to me, there are more serious issues with the update beyond the math. Now, in good faith, I don't believe comparing Division 2 to other looter shooters is accurate. I think each of the different offerings amongst the industry are a completely different beast from another. However, I do want to point out that if you take a look at Borderlands, for example, the math isn't the farthest off from Prototype either. A perfect roll for a Pearlescent is actually at a very comparable chance as a perfect roll for Prototype. Now, what is Pearlescent, you may ask? Glad you mentioned. It's a tier above Legendary, or what we call Exotics in Division 2. There's also Seraph and Effervescent, but for simplicity, I'm going to be including those 3 extra tiers of loot when I speak about loot from Borderlands, from here on out. Now, Borderlands 2, why do I bring it up? It is widely considered to be one of the best looter shooters of all time, with more than double the pieces of legendary gear alone in its drop table than in the entirety of exotic gear in the Division franchise. So why does the Prototype drop rate feel so much worse? In my opinion, it comes from 2 main things. Number 1, the token system, and 2, escalation itself. Firstly, I understand the token system is supposedly to prevent no-lifers from doing some weird farm, but let's be real for a second. There will always be people who will no-life grind everything out the first week. I would know. I played Destiny for a decade. And guess what? There's already people who have no-life grinded this out, so yeah. However, I think what is more important is that doing the same mission dozens of times as a solo player just to be able to attempt at a higher tier is absolutely disgusting and a poor game design. Let's say I grind enough tokens from 0 to 10 that I can make my attempt at level 10, and then the server goes down. There's a crash, whatever. Because this is an online only game. And then you're going to tell me to start at the beginning after taking more than likely upwards of 3 hours just to make an attempt? And let's talk about the pitiful rewards. It takes more than 5 runs at the same tier to gain back enough tokens to fail once you're above tier 5. Now, let's say you don't want to run tier 10. You still have to play the same mission 5 or 6 times just to get from tier 4 from 0, even after unlocking it, which is a bit obnoxious in itself. Now, I'm going to go back, and I'd like to talk about why Borderlands 2 pearlescents feel okay, and that is because 1, there are some ways to farm them. However, more importantly, you as a player are not necessarily forced to play specific missions for them. They can drop anywhere. Why is there not a baseline percentage for a chance of proto drop throughout the game? Throughout the other new content like Heroic Retaliations, or maybe even the newer DLC areas? Why am I limited to running the same 7-year-old base game missions way too many times just to get a chance to have a better attempt for some prototype drops? I swear to God, Massive, if you send me to the summit. I understand it takes time to get to true endgame power, and the grind not being easy. I grew up on a lot of MMORPGs for Keener's sake, but if I need to spend an hour or more to be able to start a single meaningful attempt at the grind with a decent drop chance, that's going to kill my mood fast. Now, how to combat with the math? Look, and here's my mildly hot take. I don't think optimization is the way. I think keeping it just recalibration and offering that with prototype gear will keep the loot feeling spicy enough without diminishing the grind and the rarity, the same way that happened to the usual high-end and gear set builds. Mind you, I am making this comment as someone with an 8 to 5. I don't do this YouTube thing full-time, nor Division 2 full-time. I think that getting an endgame build set up within 20 minutes to an hour of deciding to get in the build isn't great for those who want to spend more hours in the game who continually run out of content to play. I think if you just doubled the drop rate of Prototype Gear and Escalation, and maybe add the tier 1 or tier 2 drop percentage to the world and its activities, it would be significantly better. Because then, I could do other grinds and maybe get a piece or two of their prototype while I played more engaging content, enough to keep me excited. Now, you can always group up the prototype pieces and split them between the rotating missions, but personally, I think somehow that would get screwed up, as well as still have the problem of playing the same old Washington DC missions. So I think that matching Borderlands would be the more stable move, since we're already taking design notes from other looter shooters with this prototype gear. Now, I'm not going to sit here with a purely negative video. Truth be told, Retaliations were a brilliant move on Massive's part. I feel like I've started finding new spots around the map again, especially since I've been focusing on doing Retaliations in Brooklyn when I can. Truth be told, the prototype gear looks cool and feels good too. They made an excellent choice of color for the rarity, and the bigger numbers mean my monkey brain goes burr. And at least right now, I can happily say that our current builds aren't made obsolete in content that isn't tier 10 escalation, which is a really good move. I think that for a game that was supposed to be shut down in year 2, they have done what they can to continue an aging game, even with bumps included, as I've seen much worse in other franchises. For what it's worth, I have some time studying game design on my own. However, I am just a gamer with a microphone, but I do deeply enjoy topics like this. More importantly, I'm interested to know what you guys think in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. Discuss, subscribe and ring the bell, and have a wonderful day. See you next time.